welcome to another stream of me using Forward Chess app. My name is Tatev Abrahamyan, and today we are going to go over going through a new book. So this is a book by Sabina Foisor and Elshan Moradiabadi, two American players. Sabina is a former US Women's Champion, and Elshan just played in the US Championship. So they co-wrote a book together for club level players. I think it says from 1700 to 2300. It's a pretty big range, and we are going to going through it today, solving some puzzles together. So let's get started with that. So we will read I will quickly go over what the book says. I will tell you what the Forward app is, and then we'll get started. This book, they got together, they've been a couple for a while, so they decided to write a book together, and then they have some suggestions on how to solve, and these are the kind of suggestions that we could be putting to use, not just when solving, and not when just solving this book, but also when playing chess, and something that can become a long-term habit. Because it's very easy when studying and we pick something up from a book or from our coach, and then we think this was a very good idea, but we don't really put it to good use. The Forward Chess is an app that you can use on your phone, your computer, which is what I'm doing right now, or your iPad, and you can buy books through it, and I will show you how to use it. It's very easy to use, especially if you're on the go, especially if you want to do some tactics as you are on the go. Not everyone has the time to sit down and solve tactics for hours. So it's very easy to use, and you have access to Stockfish, which is very helpful because sometimes it's not clear why the answers are not right. So we can also use that to figure out why we made a mistake somewhere. So as I mentioned, I will be going through a book by Sabina Foisor and Elshan Moradiabadi called Sherlock Method. And so if we look at it, this book is composed of 3 parts, each broken down into 2 subsections. And the parts are as follows: simple positions, endgames, and complex decisions. We don't want any complex decisions in the morning, so we'll start with simple positions. And the target of the book is 1700 to 2300. So that's a very big range, but I don't think it matters because every position can be broken down. So it says we're not setting a time limit. So I'm going to tell you how we're going to be solving this, and I'm going to be following their guidelines. So it said we're not setting a time limit for each exercise, but we do not recommend exceeding 15 minutes, but we don't need that long to solve puzzles. We're strong players. For parts 1 and 2, and no more than 25 minutes in part 3. So that's also very long, and I think we'll be doing much faster than that. And then they said this is what we propose for how to read this book. It says pause for a few minutes on each diagram you reach, even the ones during lecture or in the solution part. Write down your ideas throughout and keep them for comparison purposes. Read the solutions, and once you're done with the exercises, go back to them in a week's time and repeat the same process. Compare the notes and ponder on how your thinking process may have changed. As you see in the book, there's a forward introduction, so we kind of went over that, so we don't have to read everything. So we will just go to the art of understanding one's thinking. So I will click on that. So again, this is quite a bit of reading. So let's just jump to the exercises. So we will start with this position. So this one is going to be black to move. So not so easy already. I don't see the position, I don't see the solution immediately, but let's try to solve it together. So this is a game between Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura from 2018 Speed Chess Championship. So you can type your suggestions in the chat while I am trying to figure this out on my own. So black to move, what is going on here? So this position looks quite terrifying, I will admit that. There's a lot of pieces next to our king, so that looks very, very uncomfortable. So we have to figure out if taking on g6 is a threat, or h6 is a threat, but doesn't seem like it. So let's see what, if anything, the viewers can come up with, because I already have few solutions, few ideas. Because when I look at the position from black's point of view, the first thing that comes to mind is the e2 move. Yeah, and obviously e2 is not possible because there's a knight here. So we have to consider if we want to take the knight on c3 or not. So taking that knight is not an easy decision because it's very difficult to give up this fianchettoed bishop. So we have to consider if this bishop is a good enough piece for us to hang on to. So yeah, I think my solution would also be to take the knight and then go e2. And then we're winning a rook because I just don't see how white is going to checkmate me, because after take, everything is just defended. Because if even after something like this, like, okay, I'm just making moves, but even if something like this, we're still winning a piece, right? Because we have a fork. Oops, on a rook and a rook. So we're going to win a rook, we'll be up a piece. How do I not suck? Well, that's why we're doing this, right? So you can become better. So we're going to be doing tactics together, and then we're going to be playing, and then we're going to get better. Okay, so now we can check the answer. Okay, so we're good. So good job who found it. So bishop c3 is the answer. In the game, actually, the game proceeded with knight d4. If we go back, rook d1, and knight went to f5. Of course, black is still better here. However, moments like this shouldn't be missed so easily. Ooh, easy to say, right? Okay, but this was a blitz game, so it's not so surprising that a blunder was made in a blitz game. Okay, so let's move on to our next solution, next puzzle rather. So this is a game by Sabina herself. So this is going to be white to move. Alright, so let's see what is going on in this position. So the material is equal. Obviously the last move was rook c8. So the position for black is quite uncomfortable because white obviously has more activity, a better queen on the 7 rank, rooks on c1 and d1. And just really annoying for black to deal with this. So black is trying to kick this queen away. And obviously if the queen goes back and we exchange queens, black will be quite happy. But there is some tension in the position. So what first thing we want to do is we want to look at tempo moves. So maybe we can pause and consider. You guys are welcome to type it in the chat, even if you don't think your solutions are right, of what tempo moves come to mind. Does anyone have any ideas besides rook c5? Or do people agree with rook c5? What do we think? Because if you take rook c5, if we just pause and think about it, so your queen is not hanging temporarily, but the question is what would happen if black takes on c5. So this is actually a pretty common tactical thing. So you have to think about rook c5, queen c5. Yeah, rook c5, then queen takes c5. So obviously we don't want to just trade queens and go down material. So does white have an idea there? So again, one good thing to do when we're playing chess, or especially when we're solving puzzles, is to always look at tempo moves. Because tempo moves is how we blunder, tempo moves how we miss opportunities for ourselves and our opponents. So tempo moves are checks, captures, attacks, mate threats, everything that forces your opponent do something and react to your move. So if you're threatening mate, very likely your opponent cannot just do whatever, right? So they have to somehow stop the checkmate. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in the back rank. So let's see if we can somehow put it to work. So those of you who are not familiar with this kind of tactics, so there's something going on in the back rank. So if we think about it, we're attacking the queen and the rook is defending the queen. So now we have to think of ways to distract this rook. So we have this move rook d8. And the rook cannot take now because the queen is hanging. So of course this works because the rook on b8 is undefended. And the king goes here, now we trade. And now we're just up a piece and should be just winning. So now let's see. So in the book, I kind of did my video in a way so that it blocks the answers, because before it was like showing the answers. So we can click on the solution. Yeah, good job everyone who found it. So rook c5. Oh no, she missed it. Says, yeah, rook c5 winning a piece, and queen g3 happened, was played instead, and the game eventually ended in a draw. And yeah, it does show us the solution of rook c5, as we already saw. So in the book, on the Forward Chess app, you can just click through the solution, and the solution will show you, like, you can play through it. And of course, there is no back rank issues because we can do this. And if you're solving something and you're moving the pieces, or if you have a different solution and you are not realizing what is wrong with like my solution, there's always the option of using Stockfish. We don't need to do that because we're strong players. But when you're using the app and sometimes you just don't know what is wrong with what you're doing, so you can check with Stockfish, and computer of course will tell you why you're wrong. Alright, let's keep going. Let's go to our third one. So this is a game between Levon Aronyan and Vasily Ivanchuk from the World Cup 2017. So let's take a look at this position. So this position is pretty wild. This king in the center is of course pretty sketchy. Black is really behind in development, but white really has to do something kind of immediately, because otherwise it just go down a pawn. So that would be my summary of the position. White is down a pawn, but obviously really ahead in development. And whenever I talk about this with my students, the way I explain it, like, development is a very temporary advantage, because if you don't do anything with your development, if you don't do anything with your initiative, it will kind of go away, because your opponent will just catch up, and then you know, you're just the equal now, you're not ahead anymore. So it's something very very temporary, something you have to capitalize on quite quickly. It's not like if you're up an extra pawn, or it's not like your opponent has a really bad positional weakness where you're just going to be using throughout the game, like if your opponent has a backwards pawn or an isolated pawn or anything like that. So this is, we have to take care of this now. So this one is white to move. This is Levon Aronyan versus Vasily Ivanchuk. So white to move. So actually this one I don't see it so quickly. I do have one idea, but I'm not like 100% sold on it. So if you guys have any ideas, I'm very curious to hear them. So my idea is to take on d5 and go e4. But we can also start with a4 and create a weakness, which seems kind of tempting. There's also some stuff going on this diagonal, but it's kind of hard to get to. Yeah, this knight family on g8 and f6 is quite bad. We don't like having knights like this, which we call superfluous knights, where they are two knights, they're fighting for the same square. So basically you're just hoping that one of the knights will get traded off so the other knight can take the spot. This is pretty uncomfortable and really not what we want. So that's why I'm kind of skeptical about exchanging on d5, because then I'm just gonna let the other knight out. But what other suggestions are there? Yeah, anything to do with the pin on the d file. So what comes to mind? I mean, I'm also thinking about the d file because like there isn't that much else going on in the position, but I'm not sure what can we do. Maybe I should pick in the solution. But you can check with queen. Maybe check with queen 4 after some exchange and then bishop hangs. Okay, so our suggestion. So my suggestion was taking on d5 or going a4 first and then taking on d5. Some suggestions are e4. Okay, then you guys want to trade on take on d5 and then go queen e4. Okay. So now we have to actually calculate. The first few ones were kind of easy. We just solved them, but now we have to do some work. Okay, let's think about it. Let's think about it. What do we want to do? Okay, let's calculate some lines, as difficult as it is. Knight d5 e4. Okay, so let's try it. So let's calculate knight d5. Actually, what is black going to do here? I was thinking that we'll take... You guys gonna go e4 immediately. Yeah, here we'll go e4 immediately, right? Because then the pieces are going to be awkward again. So either way, you guys wanna go e4? Something like this? Yeah, I feel like we don't really mind doing this. This doesn't look too bad. Yeah, I like the idea of taking on d5. What language was that? Great question. Okay, let's figure it out. Knight d5. Oh, look at that. 3 out of 3. The best continuation, which was played by Abrahamyan, of course. Taking advantage of black's pieces being underdeveloped and misplaced. Chicken... What is it? Chicken Gaming. Yes, I have taken a long break from my personal streaming, but now I'm streaming for Forward Chess, and you guys should definitely follow me here. I will be doing more streams and using this app, which is really easy to use and really fun to use. Okay, so knight d5, e4, which is what we said. So bishop g7 was played. We thought about bishop e7, but black is ready to castle, but Abrahamyan doesn't let it happen. After all, chess is a tragedy of one tempo. So d6. Oh no, queen e2. Ah, because queen e2, there is no queen e7. Because we're going to trade. And now the okay, so we got this one right. So we can move on. So this looks like one of my games because it looks like a French structure that I get. So this is also... Oh, this is going to be black to move. So this one is a very dynamic position. And not so easy to figure it out. Okay. So let's take a pause for a second and figure out what is going on. So this looks like a French win-over, like e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, bishop b4, and e takes d5, which is where I play both for white as for both for white and black. Obviously, as a win-over player, this is something I have to face, and as white, I have taken on d5 several times because it's kind of an easy cop-out. Sorry, I'm a bit congested. Okay, so we basically reached this position. So it's a castle on the opposite sides, and okay, so there's something with the light squares here, but we have a light square bishop, so this is not something to be scared of. I don't think we have a direct attack with something like bishop f3. Yeah, so this look is... So the queen is looking sketchy. So I like black's attacking chances because the b file is just locked. Nothing is gonna happen there. This queen, white queen needs to be on the other side of the board. But here we are. So black to move. What moves come to mind? So what we should do some candidate moves. So we already talked about the position. We figured out it's opposite side castling. Each side is attacking on the other one. On the side where the opponent's king is. So what to do? Something on f3. Yeah, I'm thinking. So h5 we're thinking, rook f3 we're thinking, something on f3. If you had a knight on f3, that'd be useful. I'm not crazy about a move like h5, and I will tell you why, and I will explain to you why. It's and this is, I feel like, a mistake that happens a lot, because when you get a position where you're attacking, and people will play, and like I'll ask like, what would you play here? And a lot of people say like a move like h5 or g5, like a pawn push. But like h5, I don't feel like does anything, and I don't feel like it contributes to your attack. because the queen is so fixed on h4, your pawn is not moving any further. So it looks like, it feels like an attacking move, but it actually isn't. What I would like is, I would like to have a piece, a heavy piece on the h file. So for example, if this rook if this rook was on h5, if we can just visualize this rook on h5, this would be pretty bad for white. So bishop f3 I like, bishop f3. So bishop f3, if g3, then rook f5, rook h5 looks quite devastating. So bishop f3, queen h3 is the move, if we can visualize this. So those of you who can't, I'll just bishop f3. Threatening mate, right? It's a pin. So the queen will go to h3. So let's try to visualize that. And then we want to do a rook lift with rook a5 and h5. The problem that I see with that is once we do that, the bishop on f3 will hang. And also we don't have rook f5 once the queen is on h5 because h3. Actually, it's not hanging. So I can show you. So what I'm thinking is, so this is the suggestion. So first of all, if you go queen h5, rook h5, your bishop on f3 will hang. So we don't want to do that. Second, I have a tactical way of maybe exchanging things here. I'm not sure this is amazing. Okay, so rook g8. Oh no, there's no rook g8. f3 is hanging. What I meant is maybe bishop e4. Okay. Oops, sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Okay, let's go back to our initial position. And let's think of other options. Yeah, there's also bishop f1. But bishop f1, rook f5 actually might be very dangerous there. But I think rook f5 in this position is actually super, super dangerous. What do you guys think about rook f5? And now I can show you what my idea is. So for example, if white passes, and the reason I'm passing is just to show what my idea is. So for example, if you go a4, my intuition, so check this out. If here, so the queen doesn't have too many squares, so now I'm going to check. So you cannot go here, right? This is discovery. So I'll give you guys a chance to find a tactic here. So it's going to be black to move. Oh, rook f3, h3 was also funny. It's also possible. So someone suggested a move. Let's see if anyone else can think of it. Well, rook f5 kind of just came from f5. So you have one of your pieces is on the way, because you would have a back rank mate. It's kind of a funny back rank mate because your rook is on the other side. But yeah, your dark square bishop is actually on the way, because if your dark square bishop was gone, you would have rook h1 mate, right? So what you want to do is you want to move your bishop with a tempo. Because if you move your bishop back, I will just play f3 or something. But if you move the bishop to e5, then we're threatening the queen and we're threatening checkmate. Okay, let's see if our solution was right. Oh, rook f5, look at that. Oh, in this position, Giri played h5 question mark. Well, at least whoever suggested h5, you played like Anish Giri, so you cannot feel too bad about it. So it says, taking away a great square for his rook. So his idea... Yeah, you're only as good as like a top 10 GM in the world. But hopefully my explanation made sense to you why h5 is just like appeals like an attacking move, but kind of isn't. We can see what happened in the game and then we'll come back to our solution. Rook e3, after which white equalizes and eventually went on to win the game. But I think this was also a blitz game, right? Okay, but let's see our solution. Wait. Oh, here. I'm clicking on the wrong thing. Okay, so rook f5. Bishop e2 was played. Oh, takes. I didn't see bishop e2. And once again, taking advantage of the trapped queen. Also, we were kind of lazy in our calculation, right? We just passed the move for white just to see how rook f5 works. So we didn't really make an effort to look for ways for white to fight back. Yeah, but this is now a problem because with the bishops gone, now we have the g file available, so rook g8 is a threat, and once again rook h5 is going to trap the queen, so g4 is being suggested. Now h5 makes sense. Okay, this is very long analysis, but okay, this position is quite bad. Because we have the h file, and even without the queens, the king is very weak here. And something like g3, if I open the king, all the... Yeah, Fabiano's games are always crazy, right? Something like knight d5 comes to mind, right? But, easy to play knight d5 when it's not your piece. So this is some kind of a Kahn or a Paulson kind of position. Clearly black has made some commitments with a move like h5. So clearly the king is not going to castle on the king side. The two bishops look very annoying, so our e4 pawn is hanging. Can we do something to this bishop? Yeah, I'm also thinking bishop f6 and knight d5. But let's see if anyone has a different idea, if anyone else agrees. I wonder if this was played, or what was played. We'll find out. So those of you who are not familiar, this knight d5 tactic is very common one in the Sicilian. When there's a pawn on e6, it's very common in like those bishop g5 knight off kind of positions, or like these kind of positions where you go, where you sacrifice. Sometimes it's a long-term sacrifice. Like you go knight d5, ed, ed, if you can visualize it in your head. Not in this position, I'm speaking a little more general of Sicilians. So knight d5, imagine like this gets traded, white gets the e file, this king gets stuck on d8, and just white just long term tries to attack black. I actually had a recent game like this in the US Women's Championship against Annie Wang, where I sacrificed on d5. She gave the material back because she didn't want I mean, okay, she got ahead to otherwise she was gonna go down a bad path, but you know, it's something that actually happens in games. It's not just a tactic we see in books. And yes, those of you, thank you everyone who just followed us today. We do have a code to, you guys are welcome. I would encourage you to go buy some books. You can set some New Year's resolutions to read more chess books. And it's a very easy to use app when you're on the go or when you're not on the go. So anyone, any other suggestions besides what I said? Because I mean, okay, I like to say, I can show you what I'm thinking. So takes, and, excuse me, and knight d5. So now f6 is hanging. Something like this would be very ugly. So if you take my pawn on a4, I will check you from e4 and take it. And this looks hideous. Like this pawn structure is just hideous. Like this endgame with opposite color bishops, this is just awful. And we'll go c3 before, everything is bad. Like every single pawn in the position is basically bad. So this is just horrendous. And if we go back to the initial, oops, keep clicking the wrong arrow. If we go back to the initial position, and so we're threatening the f6 pawn, so you can just ignore this. So the reason bishop e7 is not good is because this dark squares not doing amazing. And again, this f6 pawn, excuse me, this sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my voice today. This f6 pawn is weak. We'll play f3. There's not much is gonna happen on the g file. This position is just pretty bad for black, I think. Yeah, let's check out the solution. Oh, bishop f6. Typical and most straightforward way for white to obtain a tangible and long-term advantage. So in the game, bishop f3 was played, so he did not play this. So I'm assuming Fabiana won this. Yeah, unfortunately didn't manage to convert the game. So okay, we don't know. So rook d8. Sorry guys. Bishop b4. I mean, this position looks great for white too, honestly. So knight b5 was very similar to knight d5, right? This idea of trapping the bishop on c6 as would have happened in this game. But it also says that rook d8 was a mistake, so b5 was a better move. And this is what does it say? Is in white's favor, but black is still in the game. So okay, so just complicated position, I guess. Like this position is just a mess. Like everything is hanging. So this is the kind of position you're going for when you're playing Sicilian. So it says bishop f6, she takes f6, knight d5. And it says a typical Sicilian idea that everybody should remember. So takes. Oh yeah, I mentioned this. And this move is really nice. So the point of this move is to open up files because black has a very, very bad king and a very bad pawn structure. So this king on f8, the problem with a king on f8 like this, as I was mentioning in the other example, that initiative is very kind of fleeting and short term because your opponent can catch up to you. Like if your opponent is behind in development, they can catch up on castle. The difference here is, let me fix this a little. The difference here is the king on f8 is just never going to improve because he does not have a way to improve. So there's no way for this king to go nowhere on the board where it'll be safe. So you have a very long-term advantage playing against this king because king on f8 just long-term is just going to be suffering. And here you don't have to feel you don't have a sense of urgency to do something immediately because you can just play against this king forever as it will never become a good piece. And this would be example of long-term advantage, right? Because your opponent has a weakness that's just going to last forever. So one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to exchange all your majors, then you'll run out of your attacking potential unless you're going into winning endgame, but otherwise your position here is just good. And yeah, so d6, you don't want the bishop going to d6 or you don't want the pawn going to d6 because this d7 pawn is also probably not going to survive for too long. So bishop d6, h3 says white's domination over the light squares combined with black's king weakness and shattered pawn structure will give white a long-standing advantage. So basically what we're just talking about, right? Yeah, d6 is very nice, just opening the files and opening the d file and just letting the position to stay open. And the thing about this bishop is it's not going to have a secure square because if you go to e5, I will kick you out with f4 eventually. I will put this pawn on c3 at some point. Okay, we're hanging a pawn, but let's pretend we're not. Just to show you a point. And this bishop is not going to have a secure square because f4 will happen. On c5 you won't live too long because b4 will happen, so your bishop is just going to get kicked around. Which is why we don't mind giving up the d6 pawn. Because if we didn't give up the d6 pawn, the bishop could actually go to d6. And then maybe stay secure there. So this one will be Azara versus Caruana Pro Chess League. Why to Move. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I'm really enjoying this book, so we can continue doing so. So check out our stream tomorrow 9 p.m. Pacific and the one on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific, and hopefully I will catch you guys then. Have a great rest of the Sunday, everyone.